please check out the social media scheduler app available on GitHub. It's free and fully open source. It's available in the description below. So when it came to getting the social media scheduler app for the phone to work with Instagram images, I thought that it wasn't going to be that hard. I mean, I had been working with the Instagram API on and off, for about a year or two, probably even longer than that actually. And because of that, I had been confident that I could kind of just get this done. I knew that there were some hurdles to go through, but I felt more confident because I had already done a basic refactor of the code. As we can see here, I already have the actual functions done, but I basically just did a refactor from the Python code that I already had for the desktop version. I had never actually tested out what it would have been like to actually post an image from the phone straight to Instagram. And because I had done all this other refactoring and changing for doing text, making sure the camera works, making sure that the calendar works, and changing everything to a React Native application, I never really had time to work on images. But now that I had gotten all the text done for all the platforms, which includes Twitter, LinkedIn, and Threads, I figured now would be the time to actually start working on images. And the first platform I thought of doing was Instagram, since Instagram is basically known for images. Like, yes, they have video and stuff, but back when I remember Instagram, at least like 12 years ago, they only really had images then. And back then it was really like, Instagram and then later Vine, stuff like that. For me, I figured let's just start with images there. And knowing the fact that Threads is kind of the same, this would make it a lot easier to work on the Threads API, as it's probably almost the same tit for tat. I would have to then just test and see if there's any differences between the two. So the first thing that I wanted to check is to make sure that the flow as to how I'm even going to be handling images is correct. As you can see here, I have what is called an API handler.typescript file. It is basically what I'm using to handle out content pushing for all social media platform providers. And as I've been working on this, I had been dealing with making sure of what if it's LinkedIn, what if it's Threads, what if it's Twitter, right? But because I was always doing text first, I never really did any checks for whether or not the content itself is post, or whether or not the content is an image or video. And because now I'm working with images, I have to make sure that that logic is actually sound. So if we scroll down to the Instagram case here, we can see that we grab the credentials from the database. Therefore, we can be authorized before we do any sort of content posting. And then we have to actually check if whether or not this is an image. Technically, because of the fact that Instagram only does images and video, I don't really need to check if whether or not the content would be an image or post or anything like that, because in theory, you would never have Instagram as an option when creating out a scheduled text post, right? So that means that now I have to go inside of the post modal and make logic for that. And you can even see that in this post modal file here, that I basically filter out the accounts so that you can't see anything like Instagram, YouTube, or TikTok, and it won't be a part of the list of providers when you're being able to choose what providers you can make for a text post scheduled content. And after grabbing the credentials and then doing the user information, I then decided to test out this API. The first thing that I forgot and basically was reminded very quickly is that Instagram doesn't allow you to be able to just upload a image or video or whatever directly from your device. Other platforms do. So when I talk about this, I want to be clear here. Meta or Facebook, from at least what I see, is basically the only social media platform provider that makes it so that you have to actually put your content somewhere else on a public URL for them to be able to grab it from an API. Now, again, that's odd and annoying in so many different ways. On the desktop version of this wasn't really an issue because I have more flexibility with what I wanted to do. On the desktop side, I would basically spin up an HTTP server that I can be able to use in connection with Nagrok, so that I can basically make that URL of this like one directory public just for a second to then be able to push out the content that I had. And that again works on desktop, but I can't be doing that obviously on phone. I mean, I can, but then that complexity starts to come with questions. And then this whole thing starts to come with questions. Do I want to actually have Nagrok on the actual app on the phone? But that would mean that therefore I would need an account, which means therefore this would be tied to me, and that's not good. Would I therefore require that a person would have to set up a Nagrok account in order for them to be able to have this feature, like just to be able to push images? I feel like that would be a lot for a person who doesn't know anything on code and just wants a nice open source application that at least gives them more control of their own content and stuff. So obviously that's going to be tough there. And so now I'm basically stuck with the first question. What am I going to do to upload this content? So the first thing I thought of is, well, maybe I can just have it for now be pushed to some sort of place that would be public, that wouldn't be connected with me at all, and something where they could be able to delete the information immediately after. And the first site that I basically came upon was this one called 0x0.st. It's a temporary file hoster. It's been around for a couple different years. It has some pretty easy ways to be able to upload the content and then be able to have like a key for security and managing out your files and things like that with at least token management. I have two functions here where I'm able to upload this content and then I'm able to delete the content. Well, I thought that this was a great workaround to the issue of having to need a public HTTPS string. However, when testing this, I kept coming across issues where Facebook was not able to connect to this server. And it turns out that Facebook uses its own user agent to basically crawl the actual URL and also read out the content type and other things that would be available if it was able to access the web page. Because of the fact that that actual site only basically allows the user agent of curl to go through, Facebook can't connect to it. So I can't be able to use this actual cool site to be able to upload images or videos or whatever else I need. So I'm back to square one. And I found another site called tempfiles.org. Now, this one I don't like as much as the first one. I don't like both of them. I mean, again, like if I had to, but if you have to, I don't like this one even more so because it doesn't give you any direct option to delete something. This site kind of has the same thing where it's free. You can basically push something from their API and it will be there. And what's cool about this is that Facebook can be able to traverse this. And this function here that I made actually does the API call where it actually takes the data from your actual device and then uploads it to their servers, where then you can get a URL back and then be able to use that URL to be able to then send that along with the actual request to Instagram. You would think that things would be easier from here. Now that I have some sort of flow or path to be able to upload images, well, now it should be a little bit easier, or so I thought. But turns out I was just getting started. You see, when I decided to create an image from the import section here and be able to select an image and then use that image, it went through, but it said it failed because it wasn't the right resolutional size. Now, this was actually the first time I had seen this, which was odd. I mean, again, I had tested this out years ago on the desktop side and never came across this. But at that time, I was using my Sony mirrorless lens for pictures and stuff. So this made it so that now I had to look into the right resolutional sizes for Instagram. This made it a lot difficult because now if, let's say you don't have the right resolutional size, what am I going to do? Am I going to just therefore deny you from being able to now post the content? I mean, that's an easier method for me at the end of the day, but if a person doesn't know how to convert their stuff, they'll have to go and get another app, and like, that's not even normal on Instagram. And if you think about this, Instagram basically kind of does the same thing directly in the application. It'll show you an option as far as original size if it's optional, or the ratios that they have, 1:1 or 4:5 or whatever. It does that on the phone, and if you look at your phone, it'll actually copy and store that information or that image or that content in another folder, or most likely an Instagram folder or whatever. And so it seems like it handles all of that on the fly, and it's like in order for you to be able to use the API, you have to kind of manage those same things that the Instagram app does itself. And that's when things started to balloon, because now that means I have to go inside of the post modal and make things in Logic for being able to handle the resize in multiple different ways. When I decided that I needed to select a file, well, I'm going to need to know its information in order to know about resizing it. When you are using the application and you are selecting a file from here, it reads it from inside of the APK package, I believe. So the way the URL string is, or the URI string is essentially completely different. It doesn't have any extension on it, like a .jpeg, a .mp4, anything like that. It'll be basically like a content string in particular. And I think that's more of like, I think a deep link. I could be wrong with Android in particular, but essentially when you're dealing with that, you won't get back the information that you need in order to know what type of content it is or if it's needing to be resized at all. So this means, and it makes sense, that I'm going to have to actually copy this information to another place in order to be able to then deal with that information, edit that file. So because I don't want to modify the original file as well. First, we need to check what the content type is. And then from there, we'll need to copy that information over to the actual folder that we want to store this in. And then we'll want to know if this needs to be resized by doing a validational check against the size as far as its resolution and height and things like that. So we'll then do a detection. If we have any detection that's against the aspect ratios that Instagram doesn't allow, we'll then have an image resize needed flag or a boolean. Once we have that, we can reactively state this in the set image resizes needed reactive effect. So now inside of the post modal right here, we have this thing here that basically will give out the options for what we can resize to, either portrait, square, or landscape. And we'll only need to show that again if the content mode is image and if image resize is needed. When I hit post, it will go through basically the content that I basically set up, know if it needs to be resized. If it does need to be resized, it'll choose what type of resize option I set, and it will then use those resize widths and resize heights to then resize the image and then save that image in the content row of the database. From here, it's basically going to be about video. Once I can be able to do video, we'll be essentially done with dealing with text, image, and video with the application. We'll still have a lot more to deal with, but that'll come with time, such as doing notifications, such as being able to have something that pops up that has you automatically re-put in your authorization credentials if for some reason it didn't work out, a bunch of different things. So that's about it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. Again, if you're interested in messing around with the application, it is free, open source on GitHub. You can check it out in the description below. If you liked the video, you can like, comment, and subscribe. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you can leave them in the comments below, as I love to interact with you guys. And other than that, I hope the rest of your day goes well. Peace, everyone.